Welcome to a world where people are obsessed with nothing more than watching people beat the stuffing out of the first ugly loser they can find. So not much has changed. First, we are introduced to one of the more normal content creators, Paco, who is currently celebrating his milestone of 700,000 subscribers on YouTube, and with all the clout he has garnered, he has managed to score with one of his classmates, Rumi. She's a guest on his channel, as well as a new YouTuber herself, and she already knows exactly how to gain the favor of the algorithm. Paco asks her about her channel, to which she answers that she mainly does makeup tutorials, but judging based on what she did to the poor soul who offered to be her model, you're better off just doing it yourself in a dark room. Hoban obviously wasn't dumb enough to agree to do something like this, but the threat of getting your face smashed in can be one hell of a motivator. Hoban makes a fool of himself for the camera and tries to force the most unnatural smile I've ever seen, but once he is alone, his real feelings on the matter are revealed. The only reason he puts up with all the abuse is because while Paco is as dumb as a bag of rocks with his channel, he's a rich idiot since he knows how to rake in the cash. Ruby doesn't have as large of a following as he does, but she just needs to flash her jugs on stream once and the donations will start rolling in. On the other hand, Hoban has literally nothing he can leverage. He's not smart, he's not rich, and he's just plain ugly, so the only option for someone like him is to suck it up and accept that he's got nothing. As he returns to the classroom, he gets greeted by a drop kick to the gut from another one of his classmates who is enraged because Hoban's ugly face breaks community guidelines for being too disturbing. This is Snapper, and he's the cameraman for Paco, as well as a member of a delinquent group. However, in a fight, he's an absolute bitch, so one look at Hoban scares him enough to back off for a moment. He looks around the room, and after regaining confidence since he's got friends to back him up, Snapper volunteered to be Paco's cameraman so he could piggyback off his friend's success. And the same goes for Rumi, who managed to gain over 30,000 in revenue over the course of 20 minutes. Those figures have Hoban shocked to his core since he suffers from a condition called chronically broke. He starts thinking it may be time for him to start a YouTube channel as well, but Snapper was also thinking the exact same thing. He goes over to Paco and asks what it would take for him to start a YouTube channel, and as his bro, Paco is willing to help, but he's going to need an adult to help him sign up since minors aren't allowed to receive the revenue. He'll need his parents to let him use their bank account, but that's going to be a problem for him since he's a terrible son and got caught stealing money from them, so they're not on the best of terms. Snapper then comes up with a brilliant idea and walks over to Hoban, who's still laying on the floor. He curtly asks him if his mother is still alive since he knows she's pretty sick. But since she's not exactly using the account right now, he tells Hoban to go steal his dying mother's bank account because he wants to use it. The others laugh at Hoban, and this is a lot of disrespect being thrown his way, which most people wouldn't let that slide. But it's a 3-on-1 right now, so even if he wants to punch them all so bad, he couldn't bring himself to do it. Hoban later goes to the hospital to visit his mother, and she's trying her best to keep a cheery face on for him, but Hoban knows her condition isn't getting much better. His mother notices all the bruises on his face, and she is really worried for the well-being of her son since something is obviously wrong, but Hoban just plays it off and denies ever getting into a fight, just so he doesn't worry his mother. He heads downstairs after seeing his mother has to pay the hospital bill of $30,000. To him, that's a whole week of flipping patties just to pay for her bills. But then other people go and make that much in 20 minutes without even trying. He hates how unfair life is, but he still has some amount of hope left in him because he gets to be close to his crush, Bomi. But with his luck, I won't be surprised if she starts banging Paco for the clout. Bomi asks Hoban if he knows where all the beef patties are, so he points her to the walk-in refrigerator and she thanks him. Hoban isn't the only one who's fawning over Bomi because she's basically the idol of the restaurant, but just getting to look at her makes him happy. Just then, he hears a very familiar voice walk in, and it's the voice of Paco. He doesn't want to be spotted here in case Paco came just to mess with him, but he is shocked to hear that he came here to see Bomi since she has gone viral for being hot at Mickey D's. Paco's already got a plan laid out so he can eventually give her his D, and it starts with him giving her a challenge to make a whole burger in 30 seconds. Otherwise, she has to give him her phone number. He's really backing her into a corner here. But Hoban already knows it will be impossible for her to make that burger when she's still new here, so he has to do something before Paco steals his last bit of hope to get noticed by Bomi. Before Paco even knew it, Hoban had already finished making the burger, which he then places on the counter and explains that he made everything the exact way he wanted, even with the flag on top, so he should hurry up and leave. He knows he's going to get beat up in school by Paco tomorrow for what he just did, but it was worth it to keep Bomi out of his clutches. And it may have even earned him some affection points with her. Later that night, Hoban returns home where he is having ramen for dinner, but he's got a problem on his hands since Snapper threatened him into letting him stream in his house. And he even got Hoban to hand over his mother's bank account details too. On top of that, the ramen he's cooking isn't even for him, so Hoban spits in it before going to hand it over to Snapper. He's over there making $30,000 in donations while in someone else's home, so he's thinking about getting him to split some of that revenue for using his house. However, as Hoban was walking over to Snapper, he trips over the extension cable and inadvertently disconnects Snapper's game while also dumping the hot, spit-filled bowl of ramen on his face. Snapper is enraged and begins beating down on Hoban for costing him $30,000 in donations, and Hoban can't believe he's letting someone beat him up inside his own home. But then Snapper crosses a line when he tells Hoban that he's probably the reason his mother has cancer, and in that moment, something inside him snapped. He grabs some kimchi and throws it in Snapper's face before giving him the most deserved uppercut of his life. Snapper punches him back, but honestly, he hits like a bitch, so Hoban is able to tank it and keep fighting. Standing up for himself isn't as big of a deal as he had always thought it was, so he grabs some more kimchi and begins slugging it out with Snapper, all while the camera is still recording. Elsewhere in the city, a girl sees two teenage boys fighting with food in their boxers, and they don't have her respect, but they got her interest. After the fight has ended and Snapper has been kicked out, Hoban is left with a trash house, and he is starting to feel the pain now that the adrenaline is wearing off. He's also starting to worry about how much it will cost to fix all the damage that was done to this place, but he doesn't want to think about it, so he just rolls up on the floor and goes to sleep. The next morning, Hoban gets a frantic call from Snapper, who is panicking really bad. He yells for Hoban to take the video down, but Hoban doesn't know what Snapper is talking about. Hoban had thought the stream was disconnected when the computer went off, but the webcam never lost power, so everything that happened after that was caught in 4K. Snapper explains that the video of their fight was uploaded to YouTube, and his parents are going to kill him if they see it. Not to mention how bad it looks to lose to someone who's fighting with kimchi. Hoban can't believe what he's hearing, so he goes to YouTube to see for himself, and the video is actually online, in all its kimchi fighting glory. Overnight, it has basically spread all across the world, so Hoban worries that he has gone from being bullied locally to being bullied internationally. But just as he was about to delete the video to save himself any further embarrassment, he notices a comment thread talking about how the number of views equates to the revenue generated. It's about 0.1 yen per view, and the video already has over 10 million views, so Hoban's made 1 million yen overnight. In school, all the students have already witnessed the kimchi fight, and Snapper is lamenting over the fact that his social status has hit rock bottom over this video. He spent so much time sucking up to Paco to get himself high on the social ladder, so he's got to do something to assert his dominance soon. He looks for an easy target and goes over to the class geek to smack him around a bit. But after everyone has seen him lose to Kimchi, his current social standing is so bad that even the loser has the confidence to beat his ass in the middle of class. And Snapper's usual strategy of relying on Paco to scare people isn't going to work anymore since he's ditched him already. Meanwhile, Hoban had just gotten to the hospital, where they informed him that the cost of his mother's treatment for the week has gone up to 120,000, which would be a problem if he wasn't rich now. Outside, Hoban checks on the video and sees that the view count is still going up, so he's making a lot more money, but then he gets sucker punched out of nowhere by Snapper. He's upset that he's become a laughingstock because of Hoban's video, so he starts hassling him to get half the money that was made from the views. Hoban isn't the same wimp he was the day before, so he goes straight for the nuts and starts fighting with him. There's no way he would give Snapper any of his money since it's all in his mom's account, and it was her details that he used to create the stream in the first place. The fight continues, but this time, Hoban isn't scared of him at all since he has already fought him once before, so this time seems easier. Late into the evening, Hoban is comforting a crying Snapper, but he maintains that he still won't be handing over any of the money from the video. That's where Snapper shows him a video he recorded of the fight between him and Hoban just now, so Hoban asks if he intends to post that one as well, but Snapper is smarter than that. If he tries posting this, then people will just claim it's staged and begin insulting both of them. He came here today to ask Hoban to join him because with his help, they can both make a huge amount of money. Hoban may not like Snapper, but he does like money, so Snapper's deal sounds pretty tempting, especially since he was Paco's producer and helped get him where he is today. There's a lot about streaming that Hoban doesn't know about, so he offers to become his producer so that both of them can make a ton of money. Snapper thinks he is being slick and has Hoban hooked like a fool. He plans to make the account his own someday to regain his social status, and he'll use Hoban until he can make that happen. Hoban asks how he wants to split the money, so Snapper suggests that he take 90% of the profit and Hoban takes 10%. It looked like Hoban was about to agree to the terms, but he's not an idiot. Only a moron would agree to such a terrible deal, and they are not friends in the first place, so he flips Snapper off and begins walking away. Snapper is panicking again since his only shot at getting back to where he was is to cooperate with Hoban. So he starts trying to make a deal by going lower on the percentage, but Hoban doesn't seem interested anymore. He finally caves and agrees to do it with only 10% for himself. So Hoban agrees as well and asks what kind of content he had in mind. Snapper underestimated Hoban's intelligence, but since this is the deal he managed to get, he tells Hoban about his idea. They'll be making videos about Hoban confronting bullies in real time. The idea is good, but the next day at school, Paco has already threatened them into being a part of his stream and he intends to make them fight for his own profit. Snapper tells Hoban that this would be a really good time to do that bully confrontation, but Hoban keeps putting it off and saying he'll wait for the right moment. Eventually, while Paco is giving his usual speech to his subscribers about him doing a giveaway, Hoban seizes the moment to interrupt and call him out live on stream for scamming his viewers with the giveaways since no one has ever actually won anything from him. On top of that, Paco is generally just a piece of crap that derives great joy in bullying those weaker than him, and as proof of that, Hoban takes off his shirt to show the bruises Paco has inflicted on him. The way Hoban thinks about it, he gets beat up every time he comes to school anyway, so why not use it to make some money? The commotion draws the attention of a bunch of students in the halls, but they all just think Paco is going to beat up Hoban like usual, so the outcome is clear. However, that doesn't mean they aren't going to stay and watch though. Everything is going according to Snapper's plan since Hoban will be able to draw a bunch of Paco's subscribers over to his channel if he exposes him live, and Paco seems pretty mad about it too. However, Paco's expression quickly changes to a smug grin as he mocks Hoban for trying to expose him on stream, but his phone battery already died, so the stream ended before he could expose him. And since his social status is still secure, Paco intends to make Hoban regret ever trying to mess with him in the first place. He raises his hand and smacks Hoban across the face, following it up with several more slaps. But this is all part of Snapper's plan, as well as he wasn't dumb enough to rely on exposing Paco on his own stream. Snapper already set up his own stream and he has been secretly recording Paco ever since he started beating up Hoban. It's the perfect way to make money off Hoban getting beat up while also ruining Paco's reputation, and it may be working, but Hoban wonders to himself if people really want to see a kid get beat up so badly. He is doing this to make a lot of money so he can afford his mother's treatment without having to keep flipping burgers, and to make sure that happens, he needs to make sure that this video blows up. So he goes for a more interesting type of content and decides instead of just letting himself get beat up, he'll actually fight back. Snapper sees what Hoban is doing and he doesn't think it's a good idea to stand up to Paco since it would have just been a short beating if he stayed quiet, but now that he has challenged him, he's going to be in for the fight of his life. He has to admit that he thinks Hoban has gotten a lot braver in the past few days, but internally, Hoban is pissing himself in fear. He got into stance for a fight, but now that he takes a good look at Paco, there's no way he's fighting that monster and walking away alive. And he can't back out either since everyone already saw him basically challenge Paco to a fight. Now, normally, he would have considered getting down on his knees and apologizing to him so he won't be maimed. But then Paco insulted Hoban's mom for having cancer, and that's when Hoban stopped giving a shit and just went for it. He tackles Paco by going straight for his leg. And that may have actually done something if there wasn't 100 pounds weight difference between the two of them. Paco admits Hoban was fast to catch him off guard like that, but he should have known he was no match for him before he started this. He picks Hoban up and mocks him some more, saying he's going to send him to the hospital so he can be closer to his dying mother. Hoban gets slammed into the ground with such force that he starts reevaluating his life decisions. He never knew weight made such a huge difference in a fight since the only experience he has had is with Snapper, who's around the same weight as him. He knows he has lost the fight, but Paco isn't done yet and gets on top of him to begin caving his face in. But before he can permanently disfigure Hoban, he gets interrupted when a guy tells him he is being too noisy. Paco gets up and is ready to beat up whoever said that as well, but then he realizes that it was Kim, who is known as a rising star in MMA. He immediately takes back everything he just said because he knows Kim could knock him out in a heartbeat if he wanted to, so Kim just tells him to stay quiet because he wants to go back to sleep, but he should make sure he doesn't get woken up again by his antics. Because of this, Paco gives up on beating Hoban up and leaves the class while Hoban lies on the floor. Snapper walks up to him and thinks to himself that even though Hoban lost, the way he stood up to Paco was really cool, so he has gained a ton of fans from this. After school, Paco returned home, and while he didn't show it earlier, he was really relieved that his phone died before Hoban acted out because it would have been really bad for his image if he actually got exposed like that. He finally plugs his phone in, but he is immediately hit with a bunch of piled-up angry DMs from his subscribers, calling him a fraud for faking all those giveaways and being a piece of shit. Meanwhile, Hoban is back home and taking a shower. He knows he lost the fight today, and that's the way his life has been for the longest time, but even if he couldn't land a good hit on Paco, he was at least able to land a good hit to his wallet. Since the video of Paco beating up Hoban was uploaded, it quickly went viral, showing everyone just how bad of a person Paco really is. Of course, Paco tried to salvage the situation and created an apology video the next day, but he made one crucial error. He left the camera rolling afterwards and immediately went on to start insulting his viewers for being dumb. And from there, it was a huge downward spiral since people started looking into some of his old videos. And all of them were found to be staged or fake, so in scientific terms, bro fell off. But one man's downfall is another's staircase, as Hoban has cemented himself as a popular YouTuber and is taking in those big bucks. However, there's no going back now that he is in the public eye, so he needs to think about what he's going to do for his next video. Earlier, when he met with Snapper, they discussed switching the content they created to fights, but there's one major issue with that plan. Hoban still sucks at fighting. At best, he could probably last a minute in a fight before it just turns into a beatdown, but they'll never make any decent money if all the videos are that short. For the videos to be profitable, Hoban is going to need to be able to last at least 3 minutes in a fight, but he has no idea how he's supposed to do that. He turns to the internet for some quick advice on how to fight better, but all the advice involves going through years of training, and Hoban doesn't have time for that. He tries looking up some martial arts videos so he can at least learn some amount of self-defense, but none of them are easy enough to replicate from just looking at a video. Hoban decides that he's just going to have to teach himself how to fight instead, so he just tries looking up some basic principles for a fight, but accidentally misspells the word fight. Strangely, there's actually a channel called How to Fight, but it has no views or subscribers, so Hoban assumes it must have been made by mistake or something. But no, the channel has hundreds of videos despite no one ever seeing them, and this chance encounter with the Chicken Man was going to change Hoban's life forever. In the first video Hoban watches, the Chicken Man named Sambek explains the state of mind you need to be in to control a fight. Rule number 1 is you must never let yourself get worked up during a fight, because once you do, your opponent will be able to take advantage of your recklessness. On the flip side, you should always try to make your opponent slip up and act emotionally, because that will give you a great advantage. So the first thing Sambek is going to be teaching is how to take a hit without getting hurt. Hoban pays full attention to everything Sambek explains in the video, but it seems too easy for him to trust that it works, so he just writes it off as a scam they'll try to sell him a course or something later on. He goes to bed for the night, and the next day, Hoban heads into work to quit since the money he makes her isn't going to be enough to help pay for his mother's treatment. The news that Hoban is quitting reaches the girls in the changing room, and they all already know him from his viral videos. Bomi is particularly interested in hearing about this, so she heads out to the front to meet with Hoban. She thanks him for helping her out last time Paco came here, and since he is quitting, she won't get to see him at work anymore, so she wants to exchange contact info with him so they can keep in touch. This right here is the face of a winner. Although his text game could use some work, he is still having trouble accepting that Bomi actually wants to talk to him. But it's not a dream. While he was still grinning like an idiot, Snapper slides his way in and asks how it feels to be a YouTuber with 100k subscribers. It's really impressive to have gotten that many after only posting 2 videos, but he's got to keep it going, so he needs to come up with a way to last at least 3 minutes in a fight. Hoban thinks back to the Chicken Man video he watched, but he still doesn't think the advice he got from there will be of much use, so he says he needs more time to think of something. Snapper accuses Hoban of not taking things seriously enough. He's famous now, so he needs to start acting like it. Hoban admits that he may be famous now, but being famous usually only brings trouble. Case in point, Rumi. She approaches Hoban and asks to do a live stream with him. So since Hoban and Snapper have been dying of thirst for years, they immediately agree. Snapper snaps out of it for a moment and asks why she wants to stream with him, when she used to team up with Paco all the time. But she just says her viewers have been asking her to stream with Hoban for a while now, and she already ditched Paco after he lost all his following, so she's ready to hop on the Hoban train. Hoban is loving every minute of this, and Snapper tries to get in on the action by adding a condition that Rumi brings a friend so it can be a double date. Just then, Paco bursts into the room and he's out for blood. Hoban ruined his YouTube channel, so he's going to make sure he beats him harder than ever. Paco is insanely angry, but that makes Hoban recall what Sandbag's video had said about a worked-up opponent being totally reckless. Paco is just looking for a fight here, so since Sandbag was right about one thing, Hoban decides to try out his advice on how to take a hit without getting hurt since he'll definitely get punched anyway. However, before Paco could actually punch Hoban, Snapper comes in clutch with the camera set up and records the whole thing. With the current state of Paco's reputation, if a video like this were to be released, it would tank whatever little following he had left, so Paco was forced to back off for now. But he swears that he'll come back to get his revenge on them later. Once Paco leaves, Snapper falls to the floor since he was so scared, but at least he managed to get Paco to back off for now. He asks if Hoban is okay, but he is currently preoccupied thinking about how effective Sandbag's advice actually is. The next day, Hoban is out in town and he is supposed to be meeting Snapper so they can discuss their next video idea, but Snapper is late, so Hoban takes out his phone and immediately starts texting Bomi. It's been 3 days since he got her number and he still gets really excited every time she replies to him. But this time, she says she doesn't like texting with him anymore. She wants to move up to phone calls. Hoban is about to call her right now, but then he gets approached by a couple who recognize him as the famous YouTuber. Hoban finds this awkward, but he is glad that even scary people like these guys are acting friendly with him since he is famous. Long story short, he got mugged. Fortunately, he hasn't gotten all the YouTube money yet, so there wasn't much on him for them to steal, but it still sucks being mugged. Just then, Snapper shows up and Hoban thinks he is finally saved, but Snapper doesn't know how to fight at all, so he gets punched into the ground. The guy tells Hoban to hand over his phone since it's the only valuable thing he has on him right now, so he does so without a fight since it's just a phone. However, he soon remembers that Boney's phone number is on that phone, so he can't afford to lose it. He tries to get the man to take Snapper's phone instead, but he has no such luck. Snapper gets up, so Hoban tells him to call the cops so they can get his phone back, but Snapper has a better idea. He had been filming Hoban the entire time he was getting mugged, and his subscribers are all rooting for him to go after those muggers since they are well known around this area. This is Hoban's chance to make a video that will make him even more money, so even if he might get beat up again, he's going to take it. Hoban and Snapper later confront the muggers in a karaoke room, and Hoban demands that he gets his phone back. Snapper is recording the whole thing since a fight is definitely going to start, while Hoban is trying to stay calm and remember what he learned from the Chicken Man. He needs to keep track of which hand is his opponent's dominant one, and since he is holding the microphone with his right hand, then Hoban needs to stay to his left side. This, along with the small nature of the room, will make it so that the guy has no other choice but to throw a punch with his right hand, and once he begins the motion, Hoban puts his plan into action. He may know that the punch is coming, but that doesn't guarantee that he can avoid it, so if he's going to get punched anyway, he wants to try out Sandbag's technique to take a punch without getting hurt. Both Snapper and the girl are shocked to see him just stand there and take a punch, but don't worry, there's actually science behind this, trust me. Hoban ducked into the punch in order to stop his momentum before the opponent could build up enough force. Hoban himself couldn't believe that worked so well as he barely felt the punch, but then he got distracted for a little too long since by the time he snaps out of it, another punch is already headed his way, and he was too slow to react, so this one is actually going to hurt. However, the guy just plain misses his shot. Hoban remembers something Sandbag said about regular people usually sucking at throwing an accurate punch, so when combined with a punch interception, even if you fail to get in position, the movement should be enough to make the punch miss anyway, and as a bonus, Hoban looks really cool while dodging the punches. But even if the punches actually do connect, he isn't going to feel the pain anyway, so Hoban can focus on what's really important. Getting his phone back so he can call Bomi. Things continue like this for a while, and yes, Hoban is holding his ground against the man, but there is one major problem. He never watched any videos about how to counterattack, so he's just stuck taking hits over and over. Snapper doesn't think things are going well because the fight is dragging on way too long, which is leading to their view count going down as he speaks. He contemplates getting involved so they can end this before they lose any more viewers, but then he sees a message in chat that says Hoban is going to win the fight. It makes no sense to him since Hoban has done nothing but dodge and occasionally take punches straight to the head, but the well-informed viewer goes on to type an essay in chat saying that while it may be true that Hoban has been taking a lot of hits, but the guy's fists are in just as bad shape after all that bare-knuckle punching. He may not have noticed up till now because of the adrenaline, but he's surely going to feel it now. The guy falls to the floor in absolute agony once the pain from his broken hands sets in, so Hoban is victorious. However, it sure doesn't look like he won with how badly his face got beat up, but none of that's important right now because he finally has his phone back and can reply to Bomi. Snapper is starting to think that this may not have been worth it after all, but they did manage to gain a bunch of new fans thanks to Hoban's resilience. By the end of the week, they already have 1 million views on the video, and since they started the channel, they have gotten a total of 25 million views. And since they finally completed all the approvals, it's time to get paid. The total payout for the revenue is 2 million yuan, and Hoban is in awe of the amount of money he is currently holding in his hand. But still, for 25 million views, Hoban had thought he would get a lot more out of this. Snapper explains that the smaller amount is because it took them a while to get verified and put ads in their video. Hoban asks if they can really keep making this much money if they continue creating violent content like usual, but Snapper says it's not that simple. They got lucky this time, but if they aren't careful, they may end up angering the new tube gods. Every new tuber has nightmares of the horrifying yellow mark that appears whenever the content is too violent or graphic. They'll need to find ways around it if they want to continue with their channel. But just as they were doing some much-needed research, they noticed Rui out in the street. She seems to be streaming right now, and her male audience will definitely be subscribing to her OnlyFans later. But once she spots Hoban, she sees a golden opportunity to gain more viewers, so she starts heading straight for them. However, Hoban and Snapper want nothing to do with her, so they get out of there really quick. Once they finally lost her, they take a moment to catch their breath, and that's when Hoban notices a really cool outfit in a store. And even though it's just a tracksuit, you can tell that this thing probably costs at least 30 or 40k. But since he just got his payout, then maybe he can afford to splurge just this once. That's why he was thinking until saw that the tracksuit actually cost 140k, which is the same as the amount Hoban has to pay Snapper for his cut. Even he isn't dumb enough to waste that much money on a tracksuit, but Snapper apparently is because he doesn't think twice about dumping his whole paycheck on it. He tells Hoban that it is a basic necessity now that they are making a lot of money, but even with the fact that he makes 2 million yuan a month, he still chooses to make good financial decisions. But then he gets a text from Bomi and smart financial decisions go straight out the window because he needs to look cool for his crush. She asked to meet him out in town and he's getting really nervous because this place is full of couples, so he decides to start a live stream, but that draws a lot of unwanted attention, but it's also getting him a lot of desperately wanted attention as a girl comes running up to him asking for a selfie. But Hoban's emotional state hits rock bottom when he realizes that the girl was talking to the handsome YouTuber that was standing behind him. This guy is out in the street interviewing all the pretty girls he can find, and he soon spots an especially pretty girl, so he tries to get an interview with her as well, but the girl says she can't chat with him because she is meant to be meeting someone here, and it's at that moment Bomi finally spots Hoban. And coincidentally, she was wearing the same outfit as Hoban, so they've already got something in common. Hoban always hated the popular crowd because they were so much better than him. He was short, ugly, bitchless, and 10 IQ points away from being able to collect disability, so there wasn't much he is going for him. If nothing else, he at least wanted to be a good fighter, but that was just a pipe dream while he was forced to do whatever Paco wanted. However, there are people who even Paco didn't dare to disrespect, like Munsong, which is why Hoban wanted to be like him so much. But that's all in the past now because Hoban finally has a chance with his crush, but that doesn't change anything about his ugly face. This is all Hoban could ever ask for, and when his hand accidentally touches Bomi, he goes into a trance and can see his entire future with Bomi as his loving wife, children and all. But Hoban is snapped out of his fantasy by Bomi when she calls his name and asks if he doesn't want to eat at this cafe after all. Hoban realizes he is being weird, but he can't tell her he was imagining their married life, so he just comes up with an excuse that he's a man of few words, and while Bomi accepts it, she is a little upset and begins pouting a bit. While they are standing at the counter, Hoban starts to feel a little self-conscious because he thinks Bomi is getting bored hanging around him. And his situation isn't helped by the fact that a nearby couple immediately starts making fun of him for being short. He starts thinking that Bomi must be embarrassed to be seen with someone as vertically challenged as him, so he kicks off his jacket so Bomi doesn't have to be seen in a matching outfit with him. And from that moment on, he started acting rather cold to Bomi, and would only answer her questions with bland and uninteresting responses. He can't hold a conversation for more than 2 sentences, so Bomi sees that this chat is going nowhere and puts an end to the date right then and there, saying they should probably get going. Hobin is fun to chat with over text, but in person, he doesn't even attempt to talk to her. She apologizes for dragging him all the way out here to chat when he obviously didn't want to, but Hobin tells her she's got it all wrong. The truth is that he has never actually been on a date with a girl or even spoken to one so casually before. Nor has he been to a fancy cafe before, so he doesn't know how to act, especially since he gets really nervous whenever he looks at Bomi's pretty face. Hobin must have maxed out his charm stat because everything he said just makes Bomi like him even more, so they leave together, and all the while, a girl who has been stalking Hobin this entire day nods approvingly. While on their stroll, Bomi gets a call from an old friend of hers, and the person says they're close by, so they're on their way to meet up with her. Bomi apologizes to Hobin for bringing a third wheel on their date, but the person who just called is a friend from her grade school, but they lost touch a while ago, which is why he wants to catch up now. Hobin does not see anything wrong with this until Bomi mentions that her friend is Munsong, and all of a sudden, Hobin's chances with Bomi seem non-existent if this is the friend she tells him not to worry about. Hobin gets a new vision of the future, but this time Munsong is married to Bomi, and he's just a random guy that shows up for no reason. Bomi gets Hobin to snap out of his daydream once more, and she asks if Hobin happens to know Munsong since she thinks they go to the same school. Hobin doesn't know what to say to this, so he just agrees, saying that he and Munsong are really close friends so Bomi doesn't find out that he was a total loser in school. However, he immediately regrets lying about it because Munsong arrives and he's got the same jacket on as well. Bomi tells him his friend is here too, but Munsong has no idea who she is talking about, so when she points at Hobin, his heart skips a beat because he is definitely going to be called out for lying. However, by some miracle, Munsong is actually a pretty nice guy, so he goes along with it and says he is friends with him since they are in the same class, even though he barely remembers Hobin's name, so Hobin is wondering why he is being so nice to him. With that awkward encounter having ended, the three now start walking down the street in their matching outfits, but with how good of a pair Bomi and Munsong look like, Hobin feels like he has been demoted to a third wheel, and he doesn't want to stick around any longer so he doesn't have to watch Bomi get stolen away from him. He stops in his tracks and says he has to go home since his feet are hurting, and Bomi seems genuinely upset that he had to leave so soon, but she and Munsong have nothing else to do but carry on with their plans. As Hobin walks away, Snapper, who had been stalking him with a camera, grabs him for being an idiot and giving up on the date so soon. He and Bomi were getting along so well, so it makes no sense for him to leave now, but Hobin didn't want to stick around and try to get in between those two. Anyone could tell that they look perfect together, so compared to them, he is nothing more than an ugly toe getting in the way. Snapper gives him some words of wisdom and says love is all about fighting for the one you cherish. So is Hobin going to give up on pursuing Bomi just because his strong rival has appeared? Hobin doesn't think he has a chance of winning Bomi from Munsong, but as a famous coach once said, you miss all the shots you don't take. Hobin has been underestimating himself this whole time because at the end of the day, it was Bomi who asked him out on this date. Why would she invite him out and buy him coffee if she wasn't interested in him at all? And she looked so sad when Hobin said he was leaving, so he was really about to fumble the bag when he was already at the finish line. Hobin's eyes have been opened and he thanks Snapper for giving him the confidence to go back out and tell Bomi how he feels, but Snapper's whole speech wasn't motivated by kindness, but rather he played the part of a W wingman just for the views. His real intention is to have a stream of Hobin getting rejected and rake in the views at his expense, but as he chases after him to witness Hobin getting his heart broken, he sees something he never expected. As Hobin got to the table where Bomi and Munsong were sitting together, he tells them that he got over his toe pain, so he's fine to spend the rest of the day together. Munsong is a little concerned about Hobin's toe pain, but since he says he is fine, he gets up to take his leave. Hobin is shocked that Munsong is leaving already, but he never planned to stay long in the first place since he has to practice for his upcoming match. Hobin is internally kicking himself for nearly giving up on his date with Bomi when Munsong isn't even interested in stealing Bomi from him. As Munsong leaves, he turns back to Hobin and tells him that he thinks he is a good fighter. He saw his last video and recognized that he was taking the punches earlier to minimize the damage, and he believes Hobin wasn't striking back on purpose, even though he just never learned how to attack. Munsong says he looks forward to seeing Hobin's next video, and Hobin now knows that he needs to learn the next step of that combo. But before that, he sits with Bomi on a bench, and she asks if he came back because he has something to tell her. Hoban needs a moment to draw the courage to answer and asks her what her ideal type of guy is. Now Bomi is embarrassed as well and answers that she likes honest guys more than anything, and Hoban is excited because honesty is something he can do. He's about to tell her how he honestly feels about her, but first he picks Snapper out of the bushes since he knew he would be trying to film his confession. But then he notices that Snapper is in pretty bad shape, and that's because Paco found him. Thanks to the stream, Paco was able to track down Hoban and Bomi down, and now he's going to get his revenge. Hoban can see that things are going to end up bad, so he tells Bomi to get out of here, but Paco has beef with her as well since she didn't give him her number that time he asked for it. He calls Bomi a trifling hoe, and Hoban nearly loses control at the disrespect directed towards his crush, but he remains calm because he knows anger won't help him win this fight. He resolves to make Paco lose his temper first, so Hoban taunts him into attacking him first and tries to use the same technique as before, but unfortunately, since Paco watched the video, he knows all about that trick and counters with an uppercut. Hoban now remembers what Sandbag had said about not using the same move too often because it can easily be countered once your opponent knows about it, but Hoban doesn't know any other moves he can use because he never watched the other videos. Paco continues walking towards Hoban to beat him up more, and Hoban can't think of any methods to fight back. He gets set into a flashback of how terrible his life has been with all the bullying he had to go through, but that he got a golden opportunity to make a lot of money with his YouTube channel, and because of that, he thought he could finally fit in and become a regular kid. But that also made him grow complacent and neglect any training to become a better fighter, and now it has come back to bite him. He's getting jumped like he always was before, but back then, he thought it was easier to just get beat up than it was to resist because the pain from wounds would eventually fade away, but this time it's way worse. He didn't want Bomi to see him get beaten, so he pleads with Paco to let her go home safely, but Paco is enjoying himself way too much to let either of them go. He tells Hoban to get down on the ground and plead for forgiveness, and Hoban is willing to do it if it means Bomi will be safe. But then Paco changes his mind and tells him to take his pants off so he can be thoroughly humiliated on his own channel. That's when Hoban notices that Paco's goons have been forcing Snapper to film this whole thing, so Hoban's pride is in shambles. But what really made it sink in for him that he's a bitch is the fact that Bomi had enough courage to slap Paco when he couldn't resist. Paco gets angry and grabs Bomi by the jacket, but before he does anything, he tells Snapper to point his camera somewhere else so people don't see that he's about to punch a girl. But Hoban takes action to stop Bomi from getting hurt by drawing attention to himself and taking off his pants like Paco had wanted. Paco finds it amusing that Hoban actually strips, so he says he'll let him go once he deletes his YouTube channel. However, Hoban has one final secret weapon up his sleeve and prepares to get rid of his underwear as well, so that Paco's channel gets banned forever. But before Hoban can have his twig and berries live streamed to the whole world, Munsong arrives and holds his underwear up, telling him that he doesn't need to do that. In no time, he began taking down the goons one by one with his martial arts skills and had Paco pleading for mercy. Once he was done beating all of them up, he goes over to Bomi and asks if she's okay. And while she says she is fine, she is more concerned about Hoban since he was beaten up pretty badly. Munsong tells her that they should head home now, but she insists that she needs to go check on Hoban. However, Munsong can tell that after the mess that just occurred, Hoban may need some alone time to himself to think about things. Hoban has a moment of deep thought and begins wondering when he became such a loser. At first, he was pretty positive and outgoing in school, but then one day, Paco took Hoban's lack of suffering personally and decided to make his life a living hell. Hoban couldn't understand why he was getting beat up all of a sudden, and of course he wouldn't understand because Paco had no reason for it beyond just feeling like it. Right now, he doesn't even have the energy to curse Paco for what he did, so he just sits there and cries for a while as Snapper apologizes for what happened. By the next day, Paco is already up to his old antics, and he doesn't care if people think he's a scumbag for what he did yesterday because there will always be like-minded scumbags that will support him. And today, he has something special planned for his scumbag audience because he has bullied Snapper into putting on makeup for their amusement. But Snapper doesn't even care that Paco is trying to make a fool of him because he's wondering what could have happened to Hoban because he didn't come to school today or the last couple of days either. Snapper wants to meet him again and apologize for causing that mess, but he's been no contact for a while now. Even Bomi can't reach him because he isn't picking up her calls either, and all this while, Hoban has had himself locked inside his room, binge-watching Sandbag's videos so he can finally learn to do more than survive a fight. He wants to learn how to be a normal person in a fight, and he is willing to put in as much work as needed to make it happen. Stanback believes that even with all the self-help courses in the world, a person is never going to change unless they have the drive to do so on their own, and in Hoban's case, his anger will serve as that drive to push him to grow as a fighter. Stanback says his full training course will take a month for someone to learn, but in that time, Snapper has been relentlessly bullied by Paco, all in an attempt to bait Hoban into coming back to school. But Snapper is actually being a good friend for once and doesn't want Hoban to come and put himself in danger. Snapper says that if Hoban is watching this stream, then he should stay away from school for his own safety. And while Hoban is indeed watching the stream, he's already here and standing right behind Snapper. Paco is happy that he finally gets to beat Hoban up again, but Hoban seems a lot more confident than he was last time. He walks into class and tosses his phone over to Snapper, who is still a little confused. He looks down and sees the phone is already streaming live, and Hoban tells him to hurry up and start filming because this is the video marking his return to YouTube and is going to be about him beating Paco in a fight. We get a flashback to Snapper's experience in school after the incident in the park, and with Hoban gone, Snapper was trying to get on the good side of Rumi, who had just reached 100k subscribers. It has been a month since Hoban last came to school, but Snapper can understand why he doesn't want to show his face after the humiliation he had to go through. Rumi recalls Snapper being friends with Hoban, but Snapper immediately denies ever having a friendly relationship with such a loser. And on a completely unrelated note, Snapper asks if Rumi happens to need a producer for her YouTube channel, since he has a lot of experience with them. But he gets interrupted by Paco, who also questions him about being friends with Hoban, but Snapper once again denies it, saying it was just a business partnership for his channel, and seeing as Hoban isn't around right now, he's ready to jump ship. After listening to Snapper's speech, Paco gut punches him and proceeds to beat him down in the middle of class because he is disgusted by how easily Snapper is ready to betray the people around him for his own benefit. First, he betrayed Paco in favor of Hoban, and now he wants to betray Hoban as well, so Snapper has earned the ire of all his classmates. But in his defense, that's all he can do to help himself. He has no talents, can't get good grades, or make money on his own, so the only way he can survive is by sucking up to those stronger than him. Life is unfair to people like him, especially when the bullies never learn their lesson, because even though Paco already sank to rock bottom once after getting exposed as a scumbag, all he had to do was embrace his scumbag nature on stream, and now he's already back to 900k subscribers. And he's only getting more popular as time goes by. Meanwhile, Hoban's channel is bleeding subscribers by the minute because they haven't posted anything in a month and Hoban is MIA. Paco is to blame for all of it, but right now he's just busy thinking of a good video idea to get his channel to 1 million, and he has the perfect idea in mind, so he goes up to Snapper and tells him to bring Hoban to school tomorrow so he can beat him up and get his channel to 1 million views. But Snapper can't believe that Paco is so callously asking him to sell Hoban out like this. But then Paco says he's willing to hire Snapper back as his cameraman if he gets Hoban to come to school, and all of a sudden, Snapper is feeling pretty motivated, so he says he'll do it. He knows he is trash for doing this to Hoban, but he justifies it by saying he needs to do whatever it takes to survive in this cruel world. But since he forgot where Hoban's house is a while ago, he rushes to the hospital to ask Hoban's mom instead. Hoban's mom didn't know Hoban hasn't been going to school, but Snapper can explain why, or the fact that he's only trying to get him to come to school so he can be beaten up. So he just leaves that information out and says he has been to the house before, but he just forgot what the address is, so he needs her to write it down for him. Hoban's mom doesn't question it and immediately writes down her full address for Snapper, and once he has the paper in his hand, he believes he has punched his ticket to getting back in the good graces of Paco. But by the next day, the only thing that got punched was Snapper. Paco is angry at him because he didn't manage to get Hoban to come to school after all. Paco made a whole announcement and even had a deal with his viewers that he'd get 50k yen if he actually beats up Hoban. But Paco doesn't want to hear any of these excuses and begins smacking Snapper around. However, since Snapper failed to get Hoban here by going to his house, Paco decides to make a video of Snapper to force Hoban to come out of hiding and save him. But this is where Snapper finally learns a little about friendship and decides to not sell Hoban out. Instead, while he's on camera, he warns Hoban not to come to school right now because Paco has a mission to beat him up. And if he does it, he'll get 50k in. Back when Hoban's mom gave him the address, he was about to leave to sell Hoban out, but then Hoban's mom asks if his name happens to be Snapper, and after he confirms it, she gets really happy because Hoban had told her all about him. He mentioned how glad he was to have finally made a friend in school, and hearing that Hoban thinks of him as a friend, he realizes how wrong he has been. So even if he's getting beat up by Paco, he won't betray him. This brings us back to the moment Paco was calling Hoban out on stream while using Snapper as bait, but even now Snapper still pleaded with Hoban not to come here for his own safety, but Hoban was already right behind him. Snapper calls Hoban an idiot for coming here even though he told him not to come, but Hoban is more focused on making sure Snapper captures every move he makes on camera. Paco mocks Hoban for acting so stupid and throws a palm strike at him, but Hoban uses the get hit without taking damage technique so he is unharmed. Hoban is bobbing and weaving all over the place, but Paco isn't fazed though because he has countered this once before, so he throws his side punch. In a flashback, we see Hoban right after he got his ass handed to him by Paco in front of Bomi, and he is rewatching the video Sandbach made saying that only an idiot would expect the same move to work over and over again. Hoban is aware that he got cocky and overconfident, leading to his defeat and humiliation in front of his crush. He can't bring himself to see her again like this, and nor can he face his YouTube viewers, but he still needs the money from the channel, so he can't give up on it. He resolves to keep watching Sandbach's videos and clicks on the next one titled, How to Be a Regular Person in a Fight. He says learning this technique will take a wild month of hard work and dedication to learn, but Hoban is willing to try. The first step is getting some protein and bulking like there's no tomorrow. Body weight is a huge factor in fighting, so Hoban chucks all the protein he can find in a blender and chugs it, but it comes right back out because that shit was disgusting. He doesn't want to do this anymore, but then he sees Sandbach mention that drinking raw meat ain't good, so just go buy actual protein shakes. The second step is to have the willpower to push through the training because all that protein needs to be put to good use in building muscle. After that, Hoban needs to build stamina, so he goes to the pool to swim in order to build his endurance so he can last in long fights. But once he's done, he finishes the rest of the video and Sandbach says that everything that he just did isn't going to do jack to improve his build or stamina in just 1 month. Hoban feels betrayed, but Sandbach continues by saying that taking down a stronger opponent is going to come down to skill, and he's going to teach him the perfect technique for brawling. A reporter once asked a famous fighter what martial arts would be best for a kid who is getting bullied, and the man said there's only one skill that a kid would need to learn. So back to the present, Hoban runs up to Paco, and in one swift motion, he dooms Paco to a future of arthritis. Hoban has to practice this low kick 10,000 times over the past month, so he is glad his training paid off. Paco tries to pretend he didn't feel that kick from Hoban and mocks him for missing his thigh, but the target was never the thigh to begin with. While conventional low kicks usually aim for the thigh to build up damage over time, aiming lower deals a lot of instant damage to the opponent. Munsong is proud that Hoban was actually practicing to get better after all, and as the fight continues, Paco charges at Hoban to throw another punch, but during Hoban's training, he also watched a lot of JoJo. So he starts running away to keep his distance from Paco. So long as Paco can't reach him, he will eventually have another opening, and once the opening presents itself, Hoban delivers another calf kick to Paco. Everyone is shocked that Hoban is actually holding his ground against Paco, but Munsong is wondering why Hoban hasn't bothered using another move for a while now. Paco thinks Hoban only learned how to do calf kicks, so once he figures out how to block them, he thinks he has got Hoban against the ropes now. However, Hoban learned his lesson from last time, so he anticipated that the calf kick wouldn't be enough to win him the entire fight, so he had to learn a second move. Learning more than one skill in a month is no easy feat, but Hoban isn't the same weakling he was before, so while Paco was fixated on blocking another kick, Hoban switches things up and throws an overhand punch which knocks Paco down to the floor and out cold. There's silence in the class as everyone is stunned since no one really thought Hoban would win, but then Paco's goons try to avenge him, so Snapper steps in and warns them not to lay a finger on his friend. The goons seem to actually be a bit scared, but it's not because of Snapper, but rather Munsong who came to Hoban's aid. He turns to Hoban and tells him that he did a great job, so there's no need to be crying, but Hoban isn't crying out of pain. These are tears of victory, and he commemorates his victory by asking his viewers to like and subscribe for more content. Following that day, Paco started skipping school a lot, but likely not because he's scared of Hoban, because at the end of the day, Hoban's win could be summed up as nothing more than a little skill and a lot of dumb luck. He's more likely too ashamed to show his face in school after his reputation tanked. Hoban thinks Paco deserves it, but he feels a little bad about being the cause of all Paco's suffering. Oh wait, no he doesn't. Paco and his stupid YouTube channel. Hoban is loving every minute of Paco's suffering. As an added bonus, all the subscribers that Paco is losing are all flowing to Hoban's channel now, so Hoban has officially hit the milestone of 100K, and he is really grateful to each and every one of his viewers, so he makes a thanks video and does a headstand. And with all the new income, he was also able to buy his mom a new jacket, but she still has no idea about any of his new antics, so she wonders where he could have gotten the money to buy something like this because she's pretty sure they are broke. Hoban lies and says he got the jacket on sale for really cheap, but it actually costs more than their monthly rent. Changing topics, Hoban's mom mentions that his friend came here a while ago, and Hoban thinks she must be talking about Munson, since he's the only one he considers a friend. Snapper was outside the door to the room, and when he heard this, he went ballistic because he had a whole character arc for Hoban, and it turns out he doesn't even see him as a friend. He gets into a fight with Hoban over it, but Hoban is just smiling because he does actually see Snapper as a friend, although he can be a bit of a jerk sometimes. After Hoban and Snapper have made up with each other, they both have a meeting where Snapper mentions that it might be a good idea to get themselves a professional editor to really help their channel grow. Hoban doesn't think it's really necessary since Snapper has been doing all the editing up till now, but Snapper only knows the basics, and even that was just from him watching others do it. No matter how good their content is, it may become a routine, and people may end up getting tired of it, so they need to have a skilled editor to help keep things exciting for the viewers. Hoban is on board with the idea, but he wonders how they are supposed to find someone who's really good at editing. He suggests making a job post, but Snapper thinks that's far too old-fashioned for the current time, so instead, he starts a live stream. Hoban and Snapper both get on the bed, and Snapper tells the viewers that they are currently looking for an editor, so they'd really like to get some applicants. They ask everyone to write down their skill set and prior experience in the comment section so they can choose someone, but a lot of the viewers have no other special skills aside from living in their parents' basement. Hoban doesn't think any of these guys would be good editors, and Snapper agrees with him. So they try to clarify the job requirements and ask if anyone in chat has any editing experience. Then finally, the guy who always explains the things Hoban does on stream speaks up and says he is pretty good at editing videos. Snapper doesn't want to claim he is lying, but he is a little skeptical of the guy's skill with videos. But since he volunteered anyway, Hoban thinks they should at least meet with him so they can verify his skill. Snapper doesn't want to hire this guy since he is probably an old dude, but Hoban doesn't care how old he is as long as he is good at editing. So they ask the guy to send them his contact information so that they can meet with him for an interview. Later at school, Snapper comes up to Hoban and asks him if the old guy ended up contacting him after all, and Hoban says he did, but the greeting card he sent Hoban is so old-fashioned that Snapper immediately wants to just block him and never speak about this again. Even though Hoban is put off by the greeting card as well, he doesn't think it's right for them to cancel the interview since they did promise to meet him. Snapper asks how they are going to be doing the interview anyway, but Hoban isn't sure on the details since the guy just said he'd show up here at some point. And Hoban is pretty worried since he doesn't know how to interact with people like him. However, it turns out that the old man is actually a girl from their school, but she doesn't acknowledge their surprise at all and just smiles, saying they should get the interview started. The girl's name is Lee, and she's pretty famous for being the cutest first year, although she isn't very popular in her class regardless. She apparently grew up in a foreign country, so she learned Japanese from the internet, and now she only knows how to speak as if she's trying to sell you a car. Snapper can't believe he mistook her for an old man, and he finds the way she talks to be hilarious. But then Lee grabs his finger and tells him it's rude to point, and Snapper is now in delusional love, the same way Hoban was with Bomi, complete with a full plan of their future life together, but Hoban snaps him out of it because they still have an interview to get done. Snapper is embarrassed that he fell head over heels for Lee from just touching her hand, but he still thinks she's really cute though. Lee has gone through the effort of editing one of their videos for Hoban to review, and Hoban is impressed that she even went as far as to create an introduction from his channel. Snapper immediately jumps in and decides that Lee is the perfect person for the job, which is a decision that is totally unrelated to his crush on her. But Hoban still wants to do a more thorough interview. He likes the fact that Lee highlighted the funny comments in the video because it adds to the comedic effect, so he can definitely tell that Lee knows what she's doing, but he still can't tell whether it's worth hiring him or not. He asks her if there were any parts that she struggled to edit, so she scrolls over to the part where Hoban was about to take off his underwear on camera, as she found it really difficult to censor that part, but Hoban is so embarrassed that he hires Lee on the spot so that they can stop talking about it. Since Hoban is now on board with hiring Lee, Snapper thinks everything is settled, but Hoban still has one more question before he officially hires Lee. If she is so talented with editing, she could probably get a position with any other YouTube channel, so he wonders why she chose to come to him instead. Her interest in Hoban all started on the day that he first squared up against Paco. Hoban stood no chance of winning back then, but the look in his eyes made her willing to follow him, so she's excited to finally be working together. Hoban feels the same way, so after finalizing things with a handshake, they make an announcement on the channel that they found an editor. Balma sees this announcement, and while she's glad Hoban is able to work on his new YouTube channel again, She wishes he would at least talk to her on the phone like before, but it's been radio silence from him. As she is walking down the street, she sees a crowd of people gathered around an arcade, and they are all contemplating whether they should call the police or an ambulance after what they just witnessed. Bomber arrives at the door and she is shocked to see 4 guys laid out on the floor, while one is calmly sitting on a chair and playing a game. The leader of the gang that was just beaten up kicks the guy's chair and asks if he is the one who beat up all of his friends. The guy in the chair doesn't acknowledge the gang leader's question and instead asks him if he can borrow some money so he can keep playing the game, all while having a look on his face that says, "I can beat your ass if I want to." Meanwhile, Snapper is showing Hoban a video about a mixed martial arts fighter named Taehan, or rather a former fighter because he got fired for causing too many problems and having a bad reputation. Snapper continues, saying that Taehan had studied martial arts since he was very young, but Snapper finds it really funny that it's actually Taekwondo that he studied. He believes Taekwondo is a stupid martial art because it relies mainly on kicks, so if you take your opponent down to the ground, then you've won the fight. He thinks even he could handle Taehan in a fight as long as he watched out for his kicks, but that Lee comes up to both of them and calls Snapper an amateur for believing that Taekwondo is completely ineffective in a fight. While it may be true that sports Taekwondo would never work in a street fight because it is practiced with the purpose of scoring as many hits as possible, real combat Taekwondo is a whole different story because it aims to knock the opponent as quickly as possible. And Hoban agrees with her, but he still doesn't know what this has to do with him. Snapper reminds Hoban that their channel is based around standing up to bullies, so for their next video, he wants Hoban to fight Taehan. Hoban starts yelling that Snapper is crazy if he thinks he will fight Taehan, but this whole idea came from one of their viewers. Lee explains that Taekwondo is widely renowned as an exceptional fighting technique, although it is really flashy, so it does end up leaving a lot of openings to be exploited. However, there is an exception to this rule within the moveset of Taekwondo, and that is the back kick. Its power and precision make it one of the most feared moves in all of mixed martial arts. But while Hoban is glad to receive all this information, this isn't some random thug they are telling him to fight, this is a professional fighter. So what exactly do they expect him to do against a monster like him? He asks if they can't just switch content to an eating challenge or something, but he has already built up a fan base that wants to see fights, so he can't switch things up now. For now, let's talk a bit about the devil that is known as Taehan. He's a real psychopath and was once a famous Taekwondo practitioner, but then he suddenly quit without an explanation, and now he just picks in random people for fun, just like he did when he told a kid to swap shoes with him. He always gets what he wants because he is much stronger than everyone else, but the reason they call him a devil is because he won't beat you up directly, but rather, he'll target your friend and make you watch unless you give him what he wants. And on top of it all, Taehan doesn't even care about the stuff he steals, but he keeps doing it, just so he can have an excuse to beat people up and look down on them. Hoban has heard enough of Taehan's backstory because he is still utterly terrified to deal with him. Snapper tells him he can't back out of challenging him since he already made a promise to his viewers. Hoban says he may have said he would fight thugs, but he never said anything about fighting professionals. Lee is enraged by how much of a scumbag Taehan is, but Hoban tells her to calm down because he can't think of even the smallest reason to fight Taehan since he has never done anything to him personally, and he can't exactly go out to fight a stranger just because another stranger suggested it. Later, while Taehan is walking down the street and thinking about how he wants to be rich, he gets cornered by the boss of the gang that he beat up earlier, and the big guy starts threatening him for daring to hit his friends, but before he is even done with the sentence, Taehan had already gone and struck another one of his friends down. The big guy recognizes Taehan's attack as being Taekwondo, but he is one of those people who thinks Taekwondo is useless in a real fight because all he needs to do is grab Taehan. But that's easier said than done since Taehan is way faster than the guy had thought he would be, and his kicks are really powerful as well since the first one knocks the guy back. The guy assumes Taehan will be going for a roundhouse kick next, so he puts up his arm to guard against it. However, at the last moment, Taehan switches things up and instead strikes the guy in the back of the head. And it all went downhill from there as Takao is pummeled by Taehan until he can't fight back anymore. He starts asking Takao's friend for 100 yen if he wants to save his friend, and the guy was willing to hand it over, but then Taehan raises the price to 1 million just so he has to watch as his friend is beaten to a pulp. All this while, Snapper has been recording this whole mess, and he realizes that Taehan is an even bigger psychopath than the rumors said. He's having mixed feelings about having Hoban face someone so dangerous, but they did promise the viewers that he'd fight Taehan, so he doesn't know what to do. Just then, Taehan notices Snapper, so he tries to hide himself behind the wall, but it looks like Taehan found him regardless. Taehan asks why Snapper was filming him, so he makes up an excuse about wanting to record because he thought the Taekwondo moves were really cool. It looked like Ta-hun was buying Snapper's excuse, but then Lee comes running up like she's going to pick a fight with Ta-hun. But upon getting a little closer, she realized she'd rather not get her face kicked in, so now all three are quietly standing there and waiting for Ta-hun to let them go. They promise to delete the recording of Ta-hun and try slowly walking away, but then Tae-hun reveals that he knew that they were from the new 2 channel Viral Hit, and he had thought they came to fight him since he heard about their new video idea. But this is perfect timing for him since he knows NewTube pays a lot, so he tells Hobin to hand over his channel. And he begins beating Snapper up to persuade him to do it. This was the end of episode 6. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to not miss the next part.